Good morning and welcome to Cows Week 2026, the 200th year. So we're really excited about this. And first off, we're going to kind of tell a little bit of a story. Anybody that went to the briefing last night will kind of know what the deal is. And we've got this low pressure over here in the Atlantic, and it's quite a long way south compared to where we're used to because we've just got these big high pressures kind of pushing it down. We've got high pressure here, and then relative lows to the northeast and to the south as well. So it's kind of funneling everything into Biscay and that general direction, which is fine for now. But what we're going to get is a little bit of instability here, and you can see the isobars are kind of doing a lap of themselves there. So what we're going to get is some reasonably interesting transitions today, and I think that's really important to kind of be aware of and keep watching. So we're going to start thinking about what this looks like on the race course. So in the morning, we've got a really gentle northerly and generally dropping. So we've got a sort of drainage breeze from the north, 8 gusting 14, around about. I mean, that is not really that important because it's going to be dying by the time we're sort of thinking about sailing. Obviously, we put an AP because of this kind of big change in wind direction, which you can see between kind of 12 and 2, where we're seeing kind of 60-degree wind shift, which obviously is not really that acceptable. And so we'll start seeing some high cloud building. This is a central Solent at probably about 1 o'clock, and we'll see a really big step change where we get a 60-degree left shift, and then we start seeing a build from the southwest where it kind of stabilizes for the afternoon. Obviously, depending on the location, this will change, and we'll talk about the other locations in a minute. But once it kind of gets to that sort of direction, we then start to see a little bit more of a gentle kind of wind direction, and generally speed-wise, reasonably quite stable. So in the Western Solent, we are experiencing that drop to about 11 o'clock, which is very disappointing if you're out watching it. And then a big build. And this is really quite important that we get this right. So we're hoping that we're going to be sort of starting racing this sort of period. And you can see here that big left shift and then the build from the southwest. So we want to be maximizing our time in these places. Wind shear is reasonably unexciting, getting quite a lot of left shear, which we'd kind of expect with a left shift. So the slightly higher up air mass is basically moving faster to that kind of left shift than we are at the surface. And then you see that it kind of settles down into the evening. And that's a pretty good indicator. So the height at the top of your mast is probably going to be quite good at kind of showing you that, hopefully. So Eastern Solent, very sorry, I'm completely missed the Western Solent. So everything is kind of moved an hour ahead. And this is really important because we know that the breeze is propagating from the west, so we can start to use that as an indicator for what the breeze is doing. Again, very similar step changes, but it's a little bit less snappy, but still kind of 55, 60 degree shift between 11 and 1, which is, basically an hour advanced of the Central Solent. And that was the table we looked at. And Eastern Solent, quite a different story. We have obviously the kind of northwesterly that we see, which is pure drainage breeze from the Southampton water. And essentially we see a gentle left shift as the influence changes throughout the day. And a lot more stable breeze-wise. And so in terms of, we don't see that big build late on, because we're kind of slightly decoupled from that. The Isle of Wight does a pretty good job of deflecting that, and you basically end up in a situation where you're not really getting that wind propagating in the same way, and that means that we get consistently lighter winds and a gentle left shift throughout the day. And this obviously looks reasonably different. So looking at the speed build, we've just generally got a bit of a build after 2 o'clock, and that lines up with this section here, but again, directionally comparatively quite unstable. And we see that with our wind shear numbers as well. So at height, we see a big 10 degrees right shift, and at 2 o'clock, and then 5 degrees left at 7 o'clock in the evening. So reasonably unstable air mass, and you can see the wind speeds are varying quite a lot as well. So the sea state is going to be reasonably unexciting. Obviously, there's not really much of a driver in the areas of wind against tide. Obviously, we'll get slightly sharper chop, but generally pretty flat. Air temperature is reasonably cold, actually. So you can see the sea surface temperature is abnormally hot. So 22 degrees Celsius is a couple of degrees warmer than we would normally expect. So quite similar to last year. And that thermal enhancement doesn't really kick in the same way as we have sometimes seen. So that's really quite important. Air temperature is reasonably cool, and the temperature ashore is also not that warm. So from that point of view, not much thermal enhancement, but it will help stabilize the breeze, especially in the Western Solent. So talking about the confidence, because we have that large change in wind speed and direction in the middle of the day, it's quite hard to be 100% sure what time that's going to be. We're currently under a 1 hour AP. I'm unsure of whether we will need another hour, and that's kind of why we came to the decision that we did last night, especially just kind of prompting that sort of conversation rather than a big a big announcement of a 2 hour AP that you then can't take back, which, looking at the confidence is, I think, really important. As the as the afternoon goes on, we become more confident in both the speed and direction, but also we lose that shift. So the fair racing then becomes much easier to achieve, which is obviously what we're trying to do. Uh, in terms of other scenarios, I can imagine the cloud cover could be a little bit later than we expect, and that'll turn everything a little bit later. So we kind of mark our watch by that cloud cover, and we can obviously watch this propagating up the Solent. So that's kind of a big decider for when we kind of look at racing. And the effects might be amplified, so we might see a little bit more breeze in the Western Solent as that comes in with a little bit more force, and then the Eastern Solent is kind of its own thing. So depending on where you are, it's obviously quite a large area. So yeah, looking at the next couple of days, we have an east northeast becoming a southeast, which is going to be quite an interesting sailing day, which we're obviously going to do our best to work towards. Again, decent breeze in the afternoon. Monday is looking easterly, southeasterly, but with a lot of variables here. So I'm not super confident that we're going to get what we are seeing there. And then Tuesday is very low confidence from the southwest again. So that's really important. Have a great day, and I will see you all later.